Okay, this is just a little PowerPoint for joint classifications and actions. So just to give you a little bit of an idea about what the different classifications are of joints and also how we can describe the movement of joints. So what are joints? We've got over 200 bones in our body, and at some point they need to connect together. So our joints are where two bones meet. And our joints have different functions as well. So one way that we can classify them is we can call them fixed or fibrous, and the skull is an example of that. So you can see the lines of the skull which join up. So as a baby your brain is quite small, and then as you grow older your brain obviously needs to develop and grow, so your skull's not fixed as a child, which is why it's really important to not drop a baby on their head when they're young, because their skull hasn't fused yet. So as you get older and your brain develops to its full size, then these joints here become fixed and really strong and tough, which provide good protection for your brain. The second type of joint is a cartilaginous joint, and a cartilaginous joint is a sort of a mixture between a fixed and a freely movable joint. So it's got a little bit of movement, limited movement, and that's for things like the ribs, where it still needs to provide a fair bit of protection for your major organs like your heart and your lungs, but it needs to be able to be a little bit flexible so that you can breathe. So when you breathe in, your rib cage expands, and those cartilaginous joints allow for a little bit of movement. And the third type of joint is a synovial joint, and there's a number of different synovial joints in the body, and these are the joints that are freely movable, provide lots of movement and different planes of movement so that you can move your body around and joints can articulate on each other. Now there's 6 different types of synovial joints. They are hinge, pivot, saddle, condyloid, gliding, and ball and socket. And a little memory tool you can use to remember these is Hampton Park Secondary College grows brilliant students. So the H for hinge, P for pivot, S for saddle, C for condyloid, G for gliding, and then B and S for ball and socket joints. So just store that one away. I've got some pictures of some synovial joints here. So you can see the gliding joint, which is found in the wrist, allows two bones to sort of glide over one another. The condyloid joint is where there's a convex and a concave surface, and they also glide fairly smoothly over each other. A pivot joint is found in your neck, at the atlas axis joint, and that allows for two bones to rotate around each other, so that's why you can turn your neck side to side. Saddle joint is similar to, I suppose, a rider sitting on a saddle, so one bone sits in a groove of the other, and that's found at your thumb. So if you rotate your thumb around, that's actually a saddle joint at the base. A common joint type is the hinge joint, which a good example of that is the elbow joint or the knee joint, and that only allows for flexion and extension, which we'll talk about in a minute. And the final joint is a ball and socket joint. So this allows the most degree of movement, and an example of that is your shoulder joint. So if you rotate your shoulder all around, it's actually a ball of a bone sitting inside the socket of another bone. So there's some examples here of the type of movement that's provided at each joint, and also some examples of the actual joints. Give you a minute just to have a look through them. So it's important to understand that the different joints, the different synovial joints, allow for different movement. So in your knee joint you can only flex and extend your knee. It only goes either into a flex position where you bend your knee, or an extended position where you extend your knee. So that provides a little bit of stability around those joints. So we need them to be a little bit flexible, but also have a certain degree of stability. There's 12 actions of the joints, how we can describe how the joints move. So the first one, the first two, and they work in coordination with each other, is flexion and extension. So flexion is wherever a joint angle is decreased. So commonly found in hinge joints, when you bend your knee or when you bend your elbow. You can see in the picture there, that's the bicep flexing. Extension is the opposite, so that's when the joint angle increases. So when you straighten your knee or you straighten your elbow joint. Dorsiflexion and plantar flexion are generally found in the foot. So when you dorsiflex your foot, your toes point up towards the sky, kind of like a dorsal fin of a shark. And the opposite of that is plantar flexion. When you plant your foot down, your toes are pointing towards the ground, and a good way to remember that is planting the foot on the accelerator. Inversion and eversion are where you turn the sole of your foot either in for inversion or out for eversion, as you can see in the picture. There's 4 on this page. So rotation is when an aspect of your body rotates around an axis. So pretend that there's a rod going through the arm, and that arm is just rotating around. So it's actually rotation of the shoulder joint, and your shoulder joint allows for that rotation. Circumduction is where our arm or leg makes a circular motion. So it could be swinging your arms around, it could be an action similar to when you're swimming in your shoulder joint when it moves around in a circle. Supination and pronation are to do with your hands and also your feet. So supination is when your palms are facing the sky, and it might be, if you've got your 2 hands together, it's like you've got a bowl of soup. And pronation is when your palm is facing towards the ground, and a good way to remember that is how the pro basketballers shoot. So they shoot and they flick their wrist, and their palm is facing towards the ground. Abduction and adduction. Abduction is where a limb is taken away from the midline of the body. So you can see in the abduction, the arm is moved up away from the midline, and that's similar to, I suppose, the word abduct, to take away. And adduction, you're adding it towards your body, so it's moving towards the midline of your body. That's called adduction.